Happy Labor Day, everybody. Last long weekend of the summer of 2023. And despite what they'll tell you, there's still about 2 and a bit more weeks of summer left. So we're not out of the woods yet with the heat and whatnot. And we got a bit of heat this week, didn't we? It was pretty sweltery down in the States and a few parts of Canada. I don't know if it's still hot where you're at, but yeah, there was quite a bit of heat coming up, and altogether, thinking back on this summer, other than a couple of weeks in June, a couple of weeks in June, a couple of weeks in July, where it was fairly hot. It wasn't super hot this year in the parts where I'm at in the fortified bunker in Toronto where I'm recording this video from. I don't know what it was like where you were at. Let me know in the comments if it was hotter than usual or cooler than usual. But up here we were about average to below average, so it wasn't like one of those stinkers where it was hot from June till August, right? But I'm worried about the reason why I'm making this video is because I've been noticing this trend of this hyperbolic, hysteric weather reporting recently over the last few years. I've been noticing, the weather does not match what the weather people are telling me. They're telling me it's super hot, unusually hot, like scorching hot, and I'm not noticing it. I'm a big old fat guy, and I hate the heat and humidity. And trust me, I'll be the first one to tell you that. Okay, it's crazy hot, but last year I think I only ran my AC once or twice in June. July was not crazy hot either. Same thing with August. And again, the same with this year. So, I'm hearing on the news there were more heat waves and they're being really hysterical about that, but I'm not really experiencing what the media is telling me. And that's the reason why I'm making this video, is because there's a incongruity as to the weather that the media reports and what I experience, right? See, I'm a cyclist, right? Partly because I've been working from home for like about 20 years or so. So I haven't really needed a car, but also because I'd weigh like 900 pounds if I had a car, right? So I ride to keep my weight down, because otherwise, if I had a car, I'd be jumping in the car to just go to the corner store and whatnot instead of walking or cycling. So I ride to keep my weight down. So I ride year round. I'm constantly checking the weather network to see if what the conditions are like, if it's going to rain, if there's a wind chill, if there's a humidex. So I can dress appropriately, right? And then obviously to avoid downpours, right? But the reporting has become it just doesn't match reality. And some stations overplay the humidity, or the heat index, as it's known in the States. And then focus way too much on forest fires and whatnot. I mean, technically speaking, if you're going to be honest, most of those forest fires are arson. So you can't blame climate change for arson. So yeah, that's why I'm making this video. I wanted to see if it's happening elsewhere and not just in Canada. So this is like a little post I made last year, September, almost exactly a year ago. All summer long, I felt an incongruity between the weather reports and the weather that I've experienced it. Am I the only one? Regularly, I've heard weather reports that overstate the humidity or heat index so that it seems hotter than it is. This year, Toronto had 0 days above 30 degrees in July. So that's 2023. And yet, all summer long, channels like CP24, which is owned by Bell, have been overstating the heat index by as much as 5 degrees. And when you check the actual weather, like with the Weather Network, you get the heat index is 5 degrees cooler. So at this point, the weather reports from mainstream media have become disinformation. So, and this is the point that I'm trying to make is like, the whole point to this video is, they're trying to convince us that, the world is on fire. There's global boiling, to quote Al Gore. He actually said that, the global boiling, right? So you have, a source like Bell, which is up here in the red, overstating the heat index by, 5 degrees, right? And whereas down here in 20, in the yellow oval, you'll see it's only 24. I know this might be hard to see, but it says 24, right? Why would there be such a huge difference? Like, they match on the temperature reading. So Bell is reporting 21 and the Weather Network is reporting 21, but the way they calculate the heat index is way off. It's 5 degrees different. Right? And Bell is one of those companies that likes to be woke and, advance the message. As Critical Drinker likes to say. And whereas, the Weather Network is a little bit more conservative in how they calculate the heat index, right? And this was last year. So last year, and the reason why I bring this up is last year, I could go to the Weather Network and see how many days above 30 degrees. They used to have that information on the network, the Weather Network. Now, why do I say that? Because, well, in order to declare a heat wave, right, you need to reach a certain criteria before it can be declared a heat wave, right? And so what is the Canadian Climate Institute? You can tell they're probably heavily biased towards the climate change narrative. But what is their criteria? Well, a heat wave is a period of temperatures higher than what is normally expected. Well, it's very vague the way they say it, based on historic climate averages. Okay, well, all of this is completely vague. They can declare a heat wave whenever the fuck they want, right? The period of temperatures. Well, what is that period? Is it 1 day? Is it 12 hours? Is it 20? Is it 2 days? Is it 3 days? Is it 4 days? Is it 5 days? Is it a week? Is it 2 weeks? Like, what is the period? And then when they say higher than what is normally expected based on historic climate averages, not climate, not temperature readings, but climate average. So what are these historic climate averages? How far back do they go? Do they exclude, outlier years? Like there's so much vagary in this. Like they could call whatever they want a heat wave, right? Whereas, Environment Canada has specific criteria for declaring a heat wave. So a heat warning will be issued after at least 2 days of humidex of 42 degrees Celsius or higher. Now, in order to get a humidex of 42 degrees Celsius or higher, you have to be in the 30s. So the 30s for all our Freedom Unit loving friends down south, that would be like in the mid to high 80s, right? With the heat index into the 90s. That is what Environment Canada specifies. And they specify at least 2 days, right? So that's what a heat wave based on Environment Canada. Now, I'm going to take screenshots of all these because I'm pretty sure in the near future, all of these criteria are going to change, right? And that's why it's good to take screenshots. But let's see what the National Weather Service.gov says for what a heat wave is. A heat wave is a period of abnormally hot weather, generally lasting more than 2 days. Right? It doesn't tell you what the temperature is, but I have it here. According to Wikipedia, so I'm going to take a screenshot of this too, because I have a feeling that this information will change as the narrative needs it to later on. But Wikipedia, a heat wave is temperature that reaches 90 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 consecutive days. So the 3 sources that I've cited, the Canadian, American, and Wikipedia, all kind of agree. 2 or more days, 3 days of temperatures in the mid 80s to mid 90s, right? Well, why am I fixating on all this? Well, because if you go to the Weather Network, it used to, it normally has current temperatures, hourly temperatures, 7-day, 14-day, and then historical temperatures. Historical temperatures used to look like this, where they would take measurements of the temperature on each day, including the precipitation and whatnot, and they would post it to their website. Well, now it doesn't look like that anymore. Now their historical averages look like this. It's this fuzzy temperature range in any particular month. They don't actually give you the recorded temperatures for each particular day. So you can't go to the Weather Network's website and see if the temperature data matches the temperature reporting, right? So like they'll like, usually most weather channels will have a monthly wrap up, or they'll say, okay, this was August, we had X amount of rain, which is either above or below or about average, and X temperatures, which was above or below or about average, right? So they've removed that data from the Weather Network's website. You can't find that data anymore. It used to look like this. You could go to any particular month you want that just passed. So let's say if it was August, I could go to August and I could see what each day the recorded temperature was. They don't show that anymore. Now it's this fuzzy, zone of temperatures, right? The only time they show you the actual temperature readings is when they want to prove a point, like they did in February of this year. In February of this year, they specifically, gave you all the recorded readings. All the brown squares are above normal, the blue squares are below normal, and the gray squares are near normal, right? So when they want to prove a point, when the readings match their narrative, they will show you the data. When you want to find, let's say, January of 2024, when we had that 2 weeks of incredibly cold temperatures, like throughout Canada and the US, where's the chart for that? Because I don't recall seeing a chart for that, because it counters their narrative, right? And this is where we're at, where now if I want to actually find what the recorded temperatures were in my area, I got to go to this website here, TorontoWeatherStats.ca, and do it this way, right? So if you look in August and July of this year in Toronto, where I'm at, we had 1 day. Sorry, I'm just going to do this. It's just going to take me a moment. 1 day, 2 days, 1 day in August, 1 day in July, 3. How many days in July? So we had 3 days in July. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, and 5 days in June above 30 degrees. So technically speaking, we did not have any heat waves in southern Ontario this summer at all, just like last summer. Last summer wasn't particularly hot. But meanwhile, they will tell you that July, I recall last year, July, they were saying July was the hottest recorded month ever. And I think they said this earlier this year too about July. Oh, it's the hottest recorded month ever. Well, you know what? Yeah, it's fucking summer, you dumbasses. It's the hottest month of the year. And when your temperature readings are taken in heavily urbanized areas where there's a lot of asphalt and concrete that just soaks up the heat, the solar radiation all day long, it's gonna skew your data hotter. But I've shown, like I'll show you right now. Hold on one second. Sorry, I had to find this. So here's here's some information that I got from Environment Canada. Here's a meme I made a little while ago. On the left, you'll see the above average temperature recordings made by Environment Canada, right? This was from Toronto Star, the communist newspaper of record for Toronto and all of liberal Canada. On the left, right, you see over here all the orange and red and yellow. And I made this meme, right? So I took a map of the of the Greater Toronto area and Niagara Falls, and put it side by side so you could see the areas where the heat anomalies were recorded are the areas of built-up cities, right? So if you were to overlay these two maps on top of each other, they would correlate to all the areas that are showing hotter than usual temperature recordings are the built-up areas that have a lot of asphalt and concrete, which soak up solar radiation and, radiate it out, magnifying the temperatures that are already occurring. And if you look at the areas that are not built up, you'll see they're in the blues and the greens. And those are about normal, right? And same here. We had this from earlier this year. This happened this year. I remember it. June 2024 is when it happened. I remember I posted this. And they were screeching about climate change all over the Midwest and the Northeast of America and the eastern parts of Canada. Meanwhile, from California all the way up to the prairies and all the way over to Minnesota and even parts of Texas were below normal. This was just considered just weather. This meme got a shitload of reactions, right? And this is what I'm talking about. They're distorting the data to blind us, so they could later on in the year when we're busy living our lives, and you're not like me. You're not a 24/7 shit poster like me. You don't have time to catalog these fucking things in your brain because you have a family and you have kids to raise and shit like that. Whereas guys like me remember this shit. So later on in the year, they goes, "Oh, this is the hottest year on record," and you were so busy living your life, you didn't have time to pay attention and realize they were pulling the fucking wool over your eyes. It's all misinformation. It's actually not misinformation. It's disinformation. It's intentionally wrong information, and that's why things like places like the Weather Network, which are supposed to give you the information, no longer give you the information. Instead of giving you the historical averages that used to look like this with, rock solid temperature recordings for each day of the month, they give you this bullshit now. There's just this area, this fuzzy area of where the temperature range is going to be. Just so that later on in the year, they could tell you, yeah, we had the hottest year on record, even though it wasn't that hot. It wasn't that hot of summer. And it's been like this for a couple of 3 years now, where the media is telling us, oh, this is the hottest temperature on record. And meanwhile, you know, if you look at like different parts of the world, people are like saying it's fucking colder than normal. So, you know, and, you know, the Weather Network, who should be just focusing on, you know, producing weather forecasts, is now doing things like this, power to the people, a path forward out of the climate crisis. Is that why they no longer post historical weather data, so that they can hide that there is no climate crisis? I mean, if we go to the weather, I want to just show you something else I noticed the other day. Historical. The dates that they're using to generate this historical data are only in the last 20 years. Why is that? Why is it that historical averages based on date recorded from 2000 to 2024? Are they trying to exclude hotter years like in the 30s, when apparently it was a lot hotter? Bear with me here while I pull that up, because I found this information from earlier this year. I made a meme about it as well. Oops, what happened? You suck. Sorry about that. So you see here, is this why the historical data only is for the last 24 years? Because maybe if we go back to the 30s and the 20s and earlier, there were hotter years, but it destroys the climate change narrative, because back then we weren't nearly producing as much CO2. The CO2 emissions were a lot less. Is that why? Maybe with the historical data only goes back 24 years. All I'm saying is keep an eye on this. If you're spotting trickery like this in your area, where they no longer post temperature information, it's just, you know, this average range, temperature range, let me know. Keep an eye out on stuff like this. Because if the weather authorities are fudging the numbers, they're basically whipping up hysteria. For what purposes, I don't know. But yeah, they're not giving you the straight dope. And that's all I have to say about this. So thanks for watching. I hope you like this video. I hope you give it a thumbs up and leave a comment, because it helps engagement. And yeah, if you notice stuff like this, leave a comment. Let me know what you're seeing. All right. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed your long weekend. Talk to you soon.